Usually, when we talk about power dynamics, there is this expectation of visible leverage. It operates a lot like a basic physics equation.
Right, yeah, mass times acceleration.
Exactly. The person with the standing army or the heavier vault door, the bigger bank account, they hold the cards. And as an observer, you just look at that equation, point to the heavier side, and say, well, there it is. That's the winner.
Yeah, it's basically Newton's laws applied to human society.
Hmm.
For every action, there's a predictable reaction based entirely on earthly, measurable leverage.
Right.
We instinctively like things to be calculable because it makes the world feel predictable. I mean, even if it's deeply unfair.
Oh, for sure. But today, in this deep dive, we are tracking an ancient, really terrifying encounter where that physical equation completely collapses.
It just shatters.
It really does. We are looking at a landscape of power that is entirely invisible.
Yeah.
And a moment where that invisible power literally paralyzed a tyrant in his tracks. We're diving into a crucial moment in the history of Prophet Ibrahim, who is often known as Abraham, and his wife, Sarah, focusing on a single, astonishingly calculated prayer in Egypt.
It is such a remarkable narrative. And it's one that forces a complete paradigm shift.
Mm.
Because when the physical laws of power fail, you really have to examine the mechanics of an entirely different kind of resilience.
And while you listening right now, you may never find yourself facing an ancient monarch in a locked palace.
Hopefully not.
Right, hopefully not. But the underlying mechanics of this story, they actually apply to everyone. I mean, every single one of us experiences moments of feeling completely powerless against larger, overwhelming forces.
Absolutely.
Maybe it's a deeply entrenched toxic corporate culture, or an oppressive bureaucratic system, or just a personal crisis where the earthly odds of you coming out unscathed are essentially zero.
Right, exactly. This is the ultimate case study in how to maintain psychological composure and, tactically deploy faith when you're entirely stripped of physical agency.
So let's get into the environment that created this crisis, because the stakes here, they really couldn't be higher. Historically, the backdrop for this encounter is a severe, debilitating famine.
Yeah, it's not a casual road trip.
No, not at all. Ibrahim and Sarah are forced into a desperate migration simply to find food. And that geographic necessity pushes them straight toward the borders of Egypt.
And we really have to understand what a famine meant in the ancient world. It wasn't just a scarcity of food. It was a total breakdown of social order and security.
Just complete chaos.
Exactly. I mean, Ibrahim is a figure historically known for immense intellectual and physical action. He's a man who challenged the idols and ideologies of his entire society.
Right, he was a powerhouse.
He was. But famine is the ultimate equalizer. It strips away your community, your resources, your physical strength.
Mm.
By the time they reach Egypt, they are refugees. They are displaced, vulnerable, and completely exhausted.
Which makes what happens next so insidious.
Yeah.
Egypt at this time is a superpower, but it's ruled by a king who is, well, he's a systematic predator.
Yeah.
He has a horrific established practice of kidnapping any beautiful woman who enters his territory. And I think there is a profound historical truth embedded right here. The exploitation of the vulnerable by those in unchecked positions of power is not a new sin.
No, not at all.
It is like a fundamental archetype of human history.
It really is. Unchecked power breeds a very specific kind of pathology.
Mm.
This king represents the ultimate earthly authority operating with total impunity.
Right. Nobody tells him no.
Exactly. He doesn't fear legal repercussions because he is the law. So, predictably, his intelligence network spots Sarah, and she is forcibly taken by his guards to the royal palace.
Imagine that. You survive a devastating natural disaster, you're starving, you cross a border, just hoping to eat, only to inadvertently walk straight into a human predator's trap.
It's a literal nightmare scenario.
It is. And this brings up an immediate question about reaction. Because Ibrahim cannot fight a king's army. His leverage is zero. So when the guards take his wife, what is his first move?
Well, his reaction defies every conventional expectation of a hostage crisis. He doesn't beg the guards. He doesn't attempt a futile, suicidal physical attack.
Which is what you'd see in a movie.
Right. But the moment Sarah is taken, Ibrahim immediately stands and enters into formal prayer.
Wow. He recognizes the limits of his physical jurisdiction. Like, a sword against an empire is useless, so he doesn't even bother with the earthly equation.
Precisely. And simultaneously, inside the palace walls, as she is brought into the private chambers of this terrifying king, Sarah does something equally astonishing.
Okay.
As the king reaches out for her, she doesn't panic, she doesn't scream, and she doesn't plead. She actually asks her captor for time and space to perform her ablutions, to physically wash herself, and to pray.
Wait, let me stop you right there because I really have to push back on the logistics of this scene.
Sure.
We are talking about an unchecked tyrant who systematically kidnaps women. He operates with absolute impunity. In what universe does a predator like that honor a polite request for a prayer timeout so his victim can go wash her face? What is the actual mechanism making him pause here?
That is the crucial question. And it really comes down to the psychology of a predator. You see, tyrants and predators rely on a very specific script.
Okay, what do you mean by a script?
Well, they expect their victims to beg, to cry, to freeze, or to fight back futilely. That fear and desperation is what fuels their sense of dominance.
Oh,
Right. So when Sarah responds with an eerie, composed calmness and makes a formalized request to wash and pray, she completely shatters his script.
it's a cognitive misfire for him.
Exactly. Her psychological composure is so unexpected and honestly so unnatural in the face of his absolute power that it creates this momentary confusion. He grants the time not out of respect, but out of sheer disruption.
That is fascinating.
It is. But to understand how she maintains that composure, we have to look at the concept driving her, and that is tawakkul.
Now, I've always heard tawakkul translated simply as, trust in God. But in this context, trust feels way too passive. This doesn't look like passive acceptance. This looks like an active, tactical deployment of faith.
It is entirely active. Tawakkul is the absolute, unwavering reliance on the ultimate authority. If we go back to the physics equation of power we talked about earlier.
Right. Mass times acceleration.
Right. Ibrahim and Sarah realize that engaging the king on his own terms, using physical force or earthly negotiation, is a guaranteed loss. So through tawakkul, they actively shift the jurisdiction of the conflict.
It's like she's invoking diplomatic immunity.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, she realizes she can't win in the local earthly court, so she immediately escalates the case to the supreme cosmic court, where the king has absolutely zero jurisdiction.
That is a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And the physical act of voodoo, the ablution, is her grounding mechanism.
Right.
By taking the time to methodically wash with water, she is physically and psychologically separating herself from the terror of that locked room. She's entering a spiritual sanctuary.
Which sets the stage for the climax of this encounter. The transition from her taking that time out to the specific words she uses in her prayer is where we see the actual mechanics of this protection take hold.
Yeah, her words are so important here.
They are highly specific. She prays, "Allah, if you know that I have guarded my chastity and only given my husband his rights, do not let this disbeliever overpower me."
Notice the legalistic phrasing there. She doesn't just throw her hands up and cry, "Save me."
Right, she builds a case.
Exactly. She stakes her plea on a conditional clause based on her own integrity. If you know that I have guarded my chastity, she's bringing her moral track record, her unwavering commitment to her principles, as the foundational evidence for her defense.
And the response is instantaneous. The moment she makes this conditional plea, the king advances and his hand becomes completely paralyzed.
Just dead weight.
Yeah, goes numb and physically drops to his side. Now, if you're listening to this, it's really easy to view this through a cynical lens, to see it as just, ancient mythology, a magic spell paralyzing a bad guy.
Sure, people jump to that conclusion.
They do. But look at it through the lens of psychological warfare and absolute conviction. The physical leverage is entirely neutralized by a moral boundary.
It is the ultimate manifestation of the invisible power we discussed. The king's mind is sending the signal to his arm to take what he wants, as he has done 1,000 times before. And for the first time in his life, his biology refuses to comply.
But the paralysis isn't even the most fascinating part to me.
Right.
No, because think about it, the king is neutralized. He cannot touch her. Most people in Sarah's position would use that moment to run or scream for help or simply freeze in shock. But Sarah demonstrates this incredible, almost calculating foresight. She prays a second time, but this time she prays for the king to be cured.
Which seems entirely counterintuitive. Your attacker is finally immobilized. Why on earth would you heal him?
Right. But she actually says, if he dies right here, people will think I killed him. She is locked in a room with a tyrant, and her primary concern isn't just that she was about to be assaulted. She is already calculating the geopolitical fallout and the PR optics of the situation.
That is next level composure.
It really is. Because if a king suddenly drops dead in a locked private chamber with a foreign woman, his guards are going to burst in and execute her for assassination.
It is a masterclass in situational awareness.
Yeah.
She recognizes that his death wouldn't save her, it would just change the method of her destruction.
Yeah.
Her composure allows her to see the entire macro crisis on the chessboard, not just the single piece moving towards her in the micro crisis.
It's just brilliant. So, based on her second prayer, his hand is cured. The paralysis lifts. But of course, a tyrant's arrogance rarely disappears after one warning.
They don't learn easily?
No, they don't. His physical autonomy returns, his animalistic nature kicks back in, and he lunges for her again. And instantly, his hand is paralyzed a second time.
And this isn't just a two-part event. This cycle of aggression, sudden paralysis, and healing repeats 3 or 4 times.
3 or 4 times. It's like his brain physically cannot process the failure. Absolute power has basically rotted his ability to comprehend a boundary he can't physically crush.
Exactly. And this raises a fundamental point about the psychology of tyranny. Tyrants are accustomed to total physical compliance.
Right.
When a physical force stops them, say a larger army or stronger wall, they understand it. It fits their worldview. But when an invisible moral force stops them entirely, when their own body betrays their dark intentions, it completely shatters their psychological framework. It introduces a variable they cannot conquer.
Which leads to how the standoff finally breaks. After the 3rd or 4th time, the king is utterly frustrated and honestly deeply terrified of her.
Yeah, he's panicking.
He yells for his servants to come in, but he doesn't say she's too strong or she has a hidden weapon. He claims they haven't brought him a woman at all, but a devil, a demon.
That specific label is such a fascinating defense mechanism.
Right, because he cannot admit defeat to a human being.
Precisely. To admit that a vulnerable, displaced refugee woman defeated him through pure spiritual integrity, that would require him to acknowledge a power higher than himself.
And his ego can't handle that.
Not at all. It's much easier for his ego to categorize her as a supernatural anomaly. By labeling her a devil, he is trying to regain control of the narrative.
He immediately orders her release. And to add to the sheer absurdity of his psychological break, he gives her a royal attendant Hajar, or Hagar, as a gift to take back with her.
It's a total reversal of the power dynamic. He gives her a royal gift not out of generosity, but out of a desperate need to appease this terrifying invisible force and get her out of his palace as quickly as possible.
So she walks into the palace as a helpless, starving captive, and she walks out completely untouched, carrying a royal gift, while the most powerful man in the region is left trembling and screaming about demons.
It perfectly encapsulates the triumph of the spiritual over the physical. The physics equation of power was entirely dismantled.
So let's distill what this actually means for you, listening, navigating your own life today. Because exploring this history isn't just an academic exercise.
Right, it has real application.
Exactly. It is a profound case study in how to draw a hard boundary based on your core principles.
The broader implication here is about identifying the true source of your protection. Sarah's protection didn't come from a physical weapon, and it didn't come from negotiating with the toxic system.
Nope.
It came from an unwavering knowledge of her own integrity. She stood firmly on the fact that she had guarded her honor, and she used that moral absolute as an impenetrable shield.
When you know who you are, and you know you have maintained your integrity, you can stand in front of overwhelming odds with an entirely different kind of confidence. You aren't fighting on the tyrant's terms anymore.
It is a reminder that while we may not have control over the oppressive circumstances we find ourselves in, just as Sarah had no control over being displaced by famine and taken by guards, we retain absolute control over where we place our trust and how we respond.
It's powerful.
Yeah, the act of stepping back, taking a breath, or simply pausing to connect with your core values can be the ultimate act of defiance. It shifts the jurisdiction.
It reclaims your agency in a space where they have no authority. Which leaves me with a final, provocative thought for you to mull over as we wrap up today's deep dive.
Okay.
Think about the king's final reaction. When his immense physical leverage failed against Sarah's invisible boundary, his immediate reaction wasn't awe. It wasn't self-reflection or repentance. His immediate reaction was to call her a devil.
It's the ultimate projection of a fragile system.
Exactly. I want you to think about what that says about the psychology of power in your own world. When the strong are finally thwarted by the moral boundaries of the vulnerable, they almost always label that vulnerability as something unnatural, dangerous, or rebellious.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
It does. When a bully or a toxic workplace or a corrupt system realizes they cannot break your integrity, they don't question their own methods. They paint you as the anomaly. They label you as the problem.
Because if you're just a human standing on principle, It means their entire system of control is an illusion.
So, when the physical equation of power is broken by integrity, ask yourself who really holds the leverage. We are taught to expect power to be loud, visible, and measurable. But maybe the strongest, most impenetrable shields we will ever wield are entirely invisible. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.